Hello there, pool noodles, and welcome to the Camo Net Podcast. I am your host, Bambi Sandy. This is the only episode where I'm going to call people pool noodles. It felt right. We are with a group called Camo Net Supremacy, covering Armory Forger and the competitive community for the game, though we'll be expanding to other games in the genre, such as Hell Let Loose and Squad. If you're already involved in the competitive scene for those games, we'd love to have you over. When we expand into covering those games, we'd actually prefer putting a spotlight on people and content that's organic to those areas as opposed to cutting into things with our stuff, if that makes sense. I've already reached out to a couple of people that do casting for Squad, for instance. It's hard to try and get people to make the jump between casting, which is kind of like momentary. I'm not saying that it's easy, but like it's just different. You not necessarily requirement there to be engaged with the game and kind of understand where everything's going and why things are happening. So trying to see if those people would be interested in kind of stepping into this section. But if you've been playing Squad for 5,000 hours and you already do game analyst content and stuff like that, we don't want to muscle anyone out of the space, and we'd love to have you over. If you represent a team in the competitive community for Reforger, or if you're with a group of people that would like to get into the competitive scene as a team, join the Discord using the link in the description below. Likewise, if you're participating in Season 2 of ARCL this year and you're struggling to find people to fill slots, that's probably because nobody knows who the hell you are. Recruiting posts and generic posters made by AI can be made by anyone with basically no effort. So what you might need to differentiate yourself and give people an opportunity to really hear and figuratively see what you're about is an interview. Join the Discord, reach out, and we can give you an opportunity to advertise your team. I will ask no softball questions, though, so if you have some bullshit going on or you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, maybe not the best option. The Discord is meant to stand as a neutral space for any team or individual in the scene, regardless of skill level, hour count, or opinions on various topics. There's no association with any particular team, tournament, or server. You can use the Discord as a backup networking tool to keep in touch with people for scheduling scrimmages or for generally talking about things going on in the scene without fear of being banned or censored for wrongthink. If you join and don't want people to reach out to you in direct messages, by the way, adjust your Discord settings to ignore messages from people who aren't friends. That's not our fucking job. I'll never understand that. Moving on. I'd like to be part of a community, but I don't want to talk to anyone. Camo Net Supremacy is a collective media project / community for the scene and will not ever host its own tournament. Underline that. Our content doesn't feature crazy overlays or editing purposefully, so aside from setting technical issues and bits on the front and back end of the recordings, leave everything in the middle for transparency. Sort of like a Joe Rogan-esque thing. I can't believe I just compared myself to fucking Joe Rogan, but whatever. Better vibes that way. We have to lead things off, obviously, with an administrative note to address a recent update within the competitive community. We have been banned from the ARCL Discord and likely future ARCL events, so you won't therefore be seeing our content in that Discord any longer unless other people are posting it there. This has absolutely no effect on our plans for covering Season 2 of ARCL from a match analysis, coaching, or content perspective. We hope that ARCL Season 2 goes well and that teams that are participating enjoy the process. No one tournament, let me re-say that, no one tournament host can control who says what or who participates within the scene. So if people are ever pressured by ARCL staff to boycott our events, like the debates and play tests and stuff, for what we've already outright stated is competitive scene owned maps. So we'll publish maps and anyone can do what they want with them in the competitive scene. Or to leave our Discord, I should probably speak just a bit louder than anything we're saying. Uh, Who in that situation is applying pressure for what being in a Discord? If anyone has questions about the ban or would like to see the context for what got us removed, there's a temporary Discord channel that'll be up for about a week with everything. After that week, we'll move the channel to sorry. After that week, we'll move the channel to an archived category where anyone can opt into the role to see said information that just fits ordinarily in with how we're planning from the beginning to handle transparency. For instance, the band's channel in our Discord will never be privated. Anyone can join the Discord, and within 5 minutes, they can look up to see if their friend has been banned, and all the message logs or the video evidence for supporting that ban. So kind of nothing special there. And moving on from that, that will not be in every episode, but it will be in probably the next two. Moving on. This episode, we're going to get into a good spectrum of topics. Our first community debate was scheduled for today, but a good number of the participants had more important stuff get in the way, real life stuff. Can't really plan around a lot of that stuff. Into like if you haven't seen a family member, not saying that this is explicitly what happened, but like if you haven't seen a family member in a while and they ask if you want to like go get food, fuck this competitive stuff. This is a game, you know? So I'm never gonna shit on people or talk badly. That's not even like a neutral thing. That's like, hey man, thanks for fucking communicating it instead of just no showing. So we're gonna try and reschedule that for next weekend if we can. Also we're going to talk about a bit of the need for an academy system or a program for the scene, and the various bits that it addressed nicely. This is a subject that I'm pulling directly over from Squad and what I wanted when I was kind of there. So it's less to do with what's not happening or slash happening but not well in Reforger. It's kind of the latter. Firstly, though, I'd like to inject a little story or a diatribe, as I'm famed for. The punchline, though, if you don't want to sit through the whole fucking story and you just want to zone out, is that if you, as an individual in competitive, aren't having fun, say something. If everyone on your team dislikes how a scrimmage is running, say something to address the issue. And I've got a bit at the end that'll give that a little more context. And then also, obviously, if a tournament is mandating something weird or odd, say something or suggest something different, right? If 2 matches in, they're talking about removing half of the weapons, that feels weird. Yeah, you could give the comical example of that, right? If partway through ARCL Season 2, they announce, hey, we're going to remove all the weapons and it's just going to be pistols, you'd probably rightly be like, huh? No? No. So, back when I used to play Squad, this is the story, or the diatribe. Back when I used to play Squad, kind of when I was at the beginning of my experience with the game and my experience within competitive. So I was still just kind of a nobody, just a Joe, just a guy. I wasn't a squad lead. I didn't play a special role. Wasn't trusted with any of the scopes in the game. This is back in 2018, 2019. a period in the game where maybe 3 people in your squad got scopes, like ACOGs or whatever the fucking Russian ACOG is. And one of those people was the squad lead, and there's no way that you're gonna fit. So functionally there were only 2 people in the squad that could have the ACOGs, or the good scopes, and those went to the fraggers every time, the people that could shoot really well, because it was seen as sort of like an exponential tool. You were augmenting them, so maybe instead of going 5 kills and 1 death, now they can go 8 kills and 1 death. Which really makes the difference if you're pushing into a compound that's only got like 3 people on it or 4 people on it. So back in this time period in the game, I was still with my first team, Australian team. For anyone that's ever played Squad and is as quote unquote old as I am, it's called Unity. So back then, I was right at a period in time where I wasn't shit at the game anymore. I think I was maybe like my 200 or 300 hour mark. So I knew what was happening around me in the game and stuff like that. I just couldn't shoot well, and I wasn't senior enough to like fill into any of these roles. And we played in scrimmages all the time. It's a bit like you would expect Reforger. If I'm wrong about this, then that's fucking depressing. Where teams will have like stereotypical other teams that they'll scrimmage, almost kind of rivals or adversaries. Everyone plays on public servers, not everyone runs their own, so oftentimes you'll find that like I'm just going to pull names out of my head. That's probably not going to be true. Dark Guru has their own set of servers, and they might consistently, both in public play and then in scrimmages, play against like Rome or something, right? So if you might set up scrimmages against other teams, but if like one of those falls through, hey, this Saturday we've got a scrimmage, and they just messaged us saying like, oh, hey, something popped up, we weren't able to get signups, we had to cancel. You would reach out to like, oh, well, we'll just ask, Rome if they want to fucking play, and they'll probably say yes, right? And then there's kind of no spilled milk. So that's kind of how it was in Squad, and we always scrimmaged, always. 3 out of 4 of our scrimmages were against this particular team. They went through at some stage, though, like a big leadership change, and the relationship between the teams changed to reflect that for whatever reason. They were significantly better than us, but you could kind of tell that like the level-headedness of their leadership kind of left, and all they wanted to do from that point on was kind of shit on us, both like shit talking us in the match, which is fucking crazy if you think about it. It's a scrimmage, and take no prisoner kind of style. We'd gotten like 6 or 7 new guys, and then the average of the team, myself included, weren't really great shooters. So we were trying to work on sort of like beginner basics, gunplay, not really worrying about taking towns and stuff, just fighting over like scraps of land on like Camdesh. I fucking hated that. Or like areas on Fool's Road or Gordok, effectively just like rolling little hills and ditches and bushes where like, it's kind of moderate distances. You'll see a guy like a city block or 2 city blocks down, and all of a sudden you got to crouch down and, try to hit him before he hits you, sort of was the intent. That's like basic infantry gunplay work for Squad. It's not like instantly rounding the corner and suddenly you got to make a kill happen 3 feet in front of you, but not 5 miles away. So we had reached out to these guys because we were really trying to work on this stuff ahead of a tournament. And they were like, oh yeah, cool, whatever. And it was the tournament match that we were going to start on was Gordok, so everyone's playing on Gordok. So we load into the map, whatever the fuck, and it turns out that this team decided to just be annoying. That's the kind word for it. And all they would do, Squad, from like a fundamental pacing perspective, I can say this pretty confidently because I watched a bunch of the season 1 videos. Squad is like triple the movement speed. Not literally, but like You don't stop and sit in bushes. You don't really wait for people to come to you ever. Um, it's all stand up gunfighting. It's all, especially back then, it got more mellow and a little bit more strategic as time went on. But it really was about like you sprint until you see a guy and then you try to stop as fast as possible and drill him. And everyone, in the framework of a match, was supposed to kind of have that mindset. That's what basically every team in this tournament was going to do. So that's what we were trying to tune for, right? Well, this team decided that all they were going to do was lay prone in ditches and bushes and inside of buildings, and they were just going to hip fire stuff that got within like 3 feet of them. They wouldn't plink at you from like, yeah, they wouldn't shoot at you if you were 100 feet away, and more often than not, you just wouldn't see the guy out of the corner of your eye because you're looking for guys that are crouched or standing up, right? No one goes fucking prone in squad and competitive, anyways, at this time. So we just kept dying over and over and over and over again. And it ended up being a huge waste of time for what ended up being like an hour and a half of play. And we would, part way through, we stopped the fucking match basically. And, you know, the leadership from both teams got into a Discord channel, and basically the conversation, not that I was there, was like, what the fuck? Like, you guys know that we're trying to train for something really specific. You guys are just fucking with us. And they're like, oh yeah, well, don't worry, but we'll reset it, or like we'll run it back. And then they just did the same fucking thing, right? And after that match, we never fucking scrimmaged them ever again, right? They kind of set the tone for the relationship moving forward. Like it's a really simple ask, especially if you're going against a team that like you're significantly better than. It's a really simple ask to just say like, hey, we're just trying to work on stuff like 3 levels below you guys. Obviously, like don't just, walk away from the computer, actually play and shoot back, but like we're working on these aspects of the game, so don't do the complete opposite of that, right? A really great example that I would give that might have a little bit more definition for like team leads and stuff in this game is like if you're going against a team in a scrimmage capacity, obviously in a tournament you're trying to win no matter what. But in a scrimmage capacity, if you were playing against a team that was like really trying to work on gunplay fundamentals and stuff, and all you did was flank, right? You just put like the minimum amount of bodies that were on the point to keep the enemy team from capturing, and you put everything into a leapfrog for like the objective passed. In the context of season one, that's like if that was a scrimmage, or if a lot of those matches were scrimmages, and you just put 2 bodies on the middle objective in that fucking toilet bowl of cliffs, the farm or whatever, and then you had all 18 of your other guys push the objective past it, and you just set it so that way like it was only a map game. You'd be pretty fucking annoyed about that, right? So I say all that again just to kind of say, if people aren't willing to work with you and meet you where you're at to help with your issues, you really, really need to evaluate whether that relationship is worth what you think it is. If it's the difference between scrimmaging or not scrimmaging, maybe something is better than nothing. At least you guys can like get practice driving vehicles and doing shortcuts on routes and stuff like that. But kind of in the last episode I had touched on, or not the last episode, in the last video where I touched on the importance of like breaking up a bracket along sort of smaller skill lines or brackets or whatever you want to use the word for. And part of that I mentioned is if you have the number 2 team in the scene going against the worst team in the scene, neither of those teams are learning anything or being really challenged to any, reasonable degree. If I go hunting and I shoot a deer in the head from 500 meters away, and that deer has no concept of like, didn't smell me, it just died, right? There's nothing for the deer to learn. That's effectively and then 2, I didn't fucking really learn anything. I probably shot that deer in a fucking clearing. and I staked out that clearing or whatever the fuck uh, months ago, or like I know it's near a water source, or fuck, it might even be on my land, right? That's a terrible example because I don't go hunting anymore, but you get what I'm saying? Like, if people aren't willing, a bottom tier team scrimmaging against a top tier team is cool. If the top tier team is like, if that top tier team is so good, like maybe they're only actually bringing half of their people. If it's a 20v20 scrimmage, maybe they're only bringing like 10 or 12 people, and you're able to like make up the gulf because of that. And you're, you know, sort of for the same reason that like I see in a lot of Left 4 Dead games, there's actually a bonus that's assigned to teams that have like higher ping, like significantly higher ping, because everything that they do, even though they're doing the same actions as the team they're going against, everything that they do is exponentially harder because they have to do it on higher ping, right? So, just offering that. Um, Now, getting into the topics proper, let's talk about the need for an academy or a program system. This was something that did not exist in Squad. So, like I said, kind of at the beginning, sorry, squeaky chair. Kind of like I said at the beginning, a lot of kind of where I'm coming from this and how I'm going to talk about it is rooted in all of the significant problems that I think that this could have solved from Squad. Uh, I don't think that this need will be felt for a while in Reforger, but I'd argue that if you're feeling the need for it, it's already too late. Things are already failing. So it's important to address pipeline issues primarily when we're talking about getting people into the scene. Also, how rough it is for players that are on a certain level or in a role to progress or jump up to the next role. And then, personally, I'd say it's the more important thing, but no one else is going to feel me on this. How do we handle built up experience and knowledge, right? Um, all these teams, all of these tournaments are going to grenade and then spawn other teams and other tournaments. People will leave, people will stop playing the game, people will burn out. So now you can't sign up for the 20v20s if you've only got 12 guys. Well, does that really mean that now you're only playing in the 10v10s? Or is the reality that you tried recruiting for a couple of months, it didn't work out, and you're like, all right, bye guys, and you leave for another team that can make those numbers so you can continue the experience. That's how it happens every fucking time. Well, what happens with that experience and knowledge and the stuff that you like, the timing, how quick you can make it to this objective, your expertise at driving a vehicle through the woods without hitting a tree, but like still going full speed, all that like muscle memory, how well you can articulate like what people's priorities should be in certain settings. What happens to that knowledge when you just leave the game? Oh, right, it goes with you. So shouldn't there be kind of like a background process or an opportunity to like push that knowledge into an area, and then that area can just kind of hold that knowledge and people can step into it and pull out that when they need it. So, firstly, the biggest thing that this solves, if this doesn't get your head nodding, you don't give a fuck about competitive. Just gonna say it. Getting into competitive play for a game, typically, this isn't a good thing. Typically comes down to networking and knowing someone. You typically have to like stumble into the content to see what it's like, right? I can vaguely know that Left 4 Dead 2 has a competitive scene, but if I haven't played Left 4 Dead for 20 years and I haven't seen a competitive match to get kind of a frame of mind for like what the pace is or some, what's kind of happening in a match that's competitive for Left 4 Dead. It could be completely outside of the ordinary game, or it could just be the ordinary game that I play with my fucking friend from high school, 20 years ago, just on a higher level with like higher margins. quicker response times and stuff. But I won't know that until I see what's happening. Most people won't even make it to that stage. Um, Even if you've decided that that's something you want to do, it's often hard as well to even find yourself in a shared space to reach out to a team for joining. You could bounce around on 10 different Arma servers. You won't find a single person that advertises themselves in the course of that match as a competitive player or as like a recruiter, right? Because most of the servers that we play on, just because there's a bunch of communities in competitive that run their own servers, the majority of competitive teams don't run their own servers, right? So how the fuck do you even like shake hands with someone or see like if you'll even get accepted somewhere? Um, there's also an issue with standardizing information. Everyone starts from different viewpoints. You can recruit a guy one day that has 2 hours in the game and he literally just bought it, or you'll recruit a guy that has 100 hours in the game. The guy that you pick up that has 100 hours in the game might not know a fucking thing, but the guy with 2 hours in the game came over from squad competitive or CS:GO or something, and he's like way more driven than the 100 hour guy or the 1,000 hour guy to that degree. Um, and then like that can really lead to giant disparities between teams because people aren't even often working with the same information. In the last video where I talked about bracket styles and seeding and stuff, and how we kind of handle or break out skill for a tournament. I mentioned that there's typically top tier, there's middle tier, and then there's low tier. The gradients that are in, for instance, low tier all over the place, right? Kind of like I'd said, you can have people that are fantastic gunplay people, but they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. They couldn't tell you what's to the southwest of Morton Valley on Everon, even if they were looking at a map. They'd really have to fucking like pan around and go like northeast, southwest, right? So like as far, yeah, the biggest skill curve in the game is information and how to process it. That doesn't have anything to do with like whether you're a console player or a PC player or like, reflexes. Or, that's all just stuff that you can like teach. That's just, book information basically. Um, so it's almost impossible to get, people on like a shared framework for that. The best example that I could give was I used to play squad with a guy in competitive. He wasn't on our team, but we gelled well. So anytime that I played pubs, I just sent him an invite. And he had 4,000 hours in the game at the time, and I only had like 2,500, I think. And he didn't know about the math for objectives. It's equal numbers plus one to capture a base. He didn't know that. That's like the most basic information to know in that game. It's like, oh, hey, we're not taking the base. We've got 3 people here. That means that they've got at least 3 people here. So, how to do like effective callouts, what good infantry or like gunplay feels like, and then like I said, kind of the main facets of the game, like capture mechanics and stuff. It's really important to have something where people who've both found a team and those who haven't and they're looking for one, they're just kind of getting interested in the scene, can come together to learn like call it industry standard practices and expectations. Maybe part of that process, they have to set up like a mock scrimmage and play in it. Maybe a couple of those to shake out bugs and see like what it's like to, work with other people in a squad perspective. Most of these, competitive squad, if you want to think of it kind of at its core, which you should, is really just high level. Did I say squad? Is just high level reforger right? Where everyone's communicating, everyone gives a fuck, and then after that, you can be on varying skill levels, kind of collectively as a team. But people haven't. The vast majority of people that are going to be new to the scene haven't even probably played a match where everyone in their squad has a microphone and gives a fuck and wants to work the same area and is working towards the same goal, let alone a team where everyone's doing that, right? So there's a lot of opportunity there in an academy sort of a system where, like, hey, we're going to have a scrimmage this Saturday. And you can actually see what that feels like. So that way, when they go to join a team, they already have that all worked out. Um, it's also really important and often unaddressed for something like squad. This was the biggest need that I always kind of felt was needed. That didn't make any sense. Moving on. Uh, it's really important to have like some sort of a stage where like scouts from other teams can come in and see a selection of players that are looking for a team. You know, the ARCL Discord is a great example. There's like supposedly 1,500 people in there and like 500 free agents or whatever the fuck, but you can't get anyone to reply to your recruiting post in the free agent chat. Maybe because you don't actually know who there is looking for a team and who there is just hanging out in the Discord as like a fan. Um, that's not an original thought, by the way. Someone in the Discord said that a couple of days ago, I think, or pointed that out. That there's no differentiation between free agents and just spectators. That also gives players that are kind of on that market that are looking for a team an opportunity to select which teams they feel they'd fit with best. You know, and that'd fix really big issues like toxicity and teams that don't care about their players, because then people wouldn't feel like those teams were the only places they could go. They'd know that for North America, there are 10 other teams. So yeah, there's this top tier team, but I spent, 3 days in their Discord and they're fucking garbage. And no one teaches me anything and everyone treats me like shit. Like I don't know how to breathe. I'm just going to join a different team, right? That sets a disincentive for acting like that, because then those teams can't make fucking numbers and can't, so you would hope that it's a disincentive anyways. And then next, there's often, I've spoke to it a couple of times with like, man, if you're just kind of whatever about the competitive scene, cool, whatever, it's just an event, or you really care about it and you love PvP in the game and this is just a natural next step for you and you really do want to like embrace competitive as a hobby, as a team, for better or worse, whether it's intentional or not, it's really hard and often forgotten to like train your guys. Most of the time, like, they're not doing classes on how to like talk to people. How do you get people to like feel like playing the game? You know? Um, does your Discord have 300 people in it, but you can't get more than 5 in a voice channel to play the game, right? How do you account for that? It's you can go to school for like marketing and accounting, and I'm sure there's a couple of classes that cover like mid-level management or whatever the fuck, but they don't really have anything like that for this game, for competitive in general. Um, you know, let alone setting incentives, I'd add, for improving if you suck at a thing. So you need a mechanism for a player to get better at what they're doing, and it's really hard to facilitate that in a lot of teams, especially if you're just signed up for 10v10s and like, hey man, I can barely make numbers and get signups for the match, the tournament match this weekend on Saturday. fucking talking about having people come in on Wednesdays to train something. Come on, man, that's not gonna happen, right? So the community fix for that, this is gonna make it sound like I'm advocating for a welfare system, and if you want to call it that, sure. Um, is what if you could just send your guys to a place that does all that training for you, and now you don't have to worry about it, right? Um, it, teams and organizations are frequently, if not only, built from the top down, just speaking truth to power. People in middle or top level management aren't ever going to rotate out to give someone else a shot, right? If you're the quote unquote commander for your team, I bet you $100 you won't ever relinquish that power. You'll rotate people out under you, but you will never step out of that shot caller role. Good or bad, just own it, right? Okay. But that means, on each team, there's only ever going to be one or two guys that have networking experience with other teams to like set up scrimmages. Because if there's only one guy that's allowed to make those fucking have those discussions, yeah. Same thing with like squad leading, the norm. If you're on a team that's rotating squad leads, first of all, I'm gonna slightly take credit for that. Just a little bit. I mentioned that in like episode 5, and no one was doing it at the time. You're way ahead of the fucking ball, and you're on a team that really gives a fuck, and actually, like, you should stay with that team, hell or high water, because that's not happening anywhere else. But ordinarily, the 3 to 4 squad lead roles that you have on your team, especially like we're talking about fucking 20v20, so you're gonna have 4 squads of 5, right, at max. Those people aren't ever gonna share their secrets or like how they manage people or like how they manage the area. Otherwise, someone's gonna replace them, right? It's like just ordinary work culture, right? Doing lots of hand gesturing that I'm always forgetting. No one else can see. An academy that tailors to both new players and existing players can help address social communication disparities too. Like I said, how do you articulate like a task for everyone? Or how do you explain why we're doing something? Do you have the temperament to explain why we're doing something while we're doing it? Because, like, for instance, everyone seems to come from a milsim group, and milsim groups, for some reason, always emulate the good and the bad from the military. The military mindset is like, don't ever fucking ask me why we're doing something while we're doing it. We're going to do the thing, and then you can ask me afterwards why we did the thing. First of all, that's horseshit. Those fucking people never tell you why we did the thing after you did it. And secondly, probably just means that you're a shit leader. Like, what, you can't multitask? You signed in to being a leader, right? In the army context, for instance. There was a period where you were a sergeant or an E5, and then you did, a contract extension or a reenlistment, and then you became a staff sergeant, right? So you opted in to being in a leadership role, but you don't want to fucking tell your guys to make them better why we're doing something. Yeah, unpacking that shipping container or that Connex is really fucking time sensitive. Gotta really focus on that, right? Yeah. Anyways, it's a little specific, but and, kind of a byproduct of that as a positive thing is you can address burnout by having people step into a different realm, right? Like if I talk to so many people right now that are just there's kind of nothing to engage in. The game's boring, regardless of whether you play it on modded servers or on vanilla servers, right? There's kind of nothing to the gunplay. You get sniped from across the map by a guy with a suppressor, makes his gun completely silent, and then you rerun it again, die to a helicopter, kill a couple of people, redo it. It's fucking boring, right? Well, the answer might not be leaving competitive. It might just be, you know, there's a stage where checkers should become chess. Maybe it's not about the ordinary what's in front of your face for you anymore. Maybe it should be about how you manage people. How do I, communicate why we're doing something? Maybe it's training. Maybe it's working on maps for the team. So there's like a cool influx of like ways to work on infantry play and stuff. We're not just playing on Evron all the time. Maybe it's doing content creation. Maybe your role in the competitive community, either at large or for the team, is in like doing casting or something. But we don't organically see that stuff. Those aren't options, which fucking sucks. And having, again, you kind of treat it like university. At a competitive academy or a program is like going to university or like university classes. So like if I'm at that level as a gun player and I'm just not feeling it anymore, I can go and I can learn not how to just be a squad lead, but how to be a good squad lead, right? The team gets an like an advantage because now they get back a product that's better. Arguably, like, you might still be the same quality, but like now you can just do the, one rung up job well. And two, you got something that you wouldn't have otherwise gotten. You got engagement. You got an ulterior opportunity. Lastly, having an entity that's able to soak up common like meta knowledge, how we do stuff. If you ask someone in squad today what a canary is, they'll have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. That just got lost to time. It was deemed irrelevant, so it didn't get passed on. Tips, tricks, stuff that people feel out. Someone might be feeling really creative and they might realize, oh my god, you can vault over this wall right here. No one's ever seen that before. Where does that knowledge go? Should go somewhere. Without something to kind of make records and maintain, like, where's the community at now? Where's it going to be a year from now? And then you're guaranteeing a move backwards as people leave the game, right? That experience just goes out the window. And then I would argue too, like it'd be cool from a lore perspective, hey, Reforger is my game. There are a ton of other games out there, but it's like being an Xbox person over being a PlayStation person. Like, hey, I've just spent my life with Xbox, right? There are all kinds of players that are like, hey man, like, Reforger is really hitting the spot right now. I really like the community angle and what's possible with the game. Yeah, there are other games out there, but I'm probably just not going to move on, right? In that same sort of way, or that same sort of vibe, wouldn't it be cool to look back at, 5 years from now at your time in both Reforger and Arma 4 and go like, oh man, go through and watch old like casted matches, see like old interviews and stuff like that. And that's a bit of like what I'm trying to set up here, because I looked back at my time in squad and, aside from maybe some scoreboard screenshots and like some old YouTube tutorial content, I don't have anything to postmark like the cool, remember when that tournament, like exploded while we were in the semifinals, and like mid-match, the caster and the referees left the match and we just kept playing because like, fuck it. I don't have anything to show for that, So it'd be cool to have something like an academy where not only can people go, if like, for instance, how do you become a caster? Who knows what goes into that, right? What, you're going to reach out to the fucking YouTuber? Oh, he doesn't accept, messages. He doesn't interact with the community like that, which is common for Squad 2, by the way. I'm not hating on anyone in Reforger, but um, not only would it be cool to have like programs or quote unquote classes where you can learn like what goes into being a good caster. Like, yeah, you can download OBS and link it to Twitch and just fucking float around an admin cam. That's not what goes into being a good caster. Wouldn't it be cool if, you know, on one hand, you've got classes for stuff like that, and then on the other, you have this place where like you can just archive all that shit, and then people can delete their team discords and tournaments can come and go and wherever the fuck, but this place is still standing. And it's still got all that, you know? So I'd like to close with a comment. This is going to be a short episode. A comment about intent and toxicity. The community isn't here right now, where this is like the primary issue, but it will very soon be here. So it's important to talk about ahead of time if we're going to get ahead of it. I'd like to speak specifically about what the threshold for toxicity and negative traits should be for the community. If you have a team, this is directly from Squad, if the top 3 teams are radioactive, right? Their level of play is beyond anything that you will approach, right? You're talking about people that jiggle peek around trees so fast that you literally never saw muzzle flash. Talking about people that will position themselves on hills that overlook objectives, but in such a way through a combination of like leaning and stance control, where if you look at that hill, you only see like the top of their gun. There's no opportunity for you to kill them there. Yeah. I fucking hated that about Squad. If top teams are absolutely toxic and shit on everyone under them, right? How do you define what their value is in the community? Well, those are the top teams. They can develop metas that like kind of filter down and everyone else can emulate or whatever. But maybe you don't emulate like the community aspects that they fucking suck at or whatever, right? What decides like what should be carried on and what should, how do we decide what should be encouraged and what should be outright like, hey, no, that's fucking stupid. What are you doing? And the best way that I can speak to this is by giving an example. It's really simple that everyone can vibe with. Everyone agrees that intentional team killing should be grounds for getting banned off of a server, right? You spawn in at a base, and there's a guy just schwacking everyone with a light machine gun. Why don't we collectively set like automatic week-long bans or permabans for team kills? You do the thing, and a bot applies the ban. There's no like admin that needs to be online, right? Obviously, partly because not all team kills are intentional. But more importantly, I'd argue, because intentional team kills are actually fine if the context makes sense, right? If you and I are defending an objective and we know, because we saw him drive in and we just didn't get an opportunity to kill him or whatever, or like in a Jeep, and we know that there are 2 enemies contesting the area. I have an RPG on one side of the base and I'm standing on a tent. You're on the other side of the base, coming through some trees and bushes on the edge of a tree line. If I see the 2 guys inside of a bush that you just walked past, and I shoot at the bush with the RPG, and it kills everyone, you included, that's an intentional team kill, right? The important kind of thing here is the intentional part of intentional team kill is really misunderstood, both by the competitive community and just by everyone in Reforger. Same thing with Squad. It really doesn't happen in Squad because like I don't know, the spacing is just different. Your name, you can always see where people are on the map. I can't really speak to why that's not more prevalent in squad, but um, meaning to do the thing isn't the issue. Malice is the issue. If I know that there's no justifiable reason to team kill you, and I do it anyways, I know what I'm doing is wrong, but I do it anyways, right? That's the ill intent, the negativity, the maliciousness of the team kills what makes that wrong, right? So if that's the root of what makes intentional team killing bad, the competitive community should operate on the same sort of expectation. Toxicity in the form of, for instance, like someone in a team Discord saying that their friend is gay as hell. That's not the same thing as DDoSing the Discord, right? It's not the same as cheating or using reshade. And it's not like any of us really have fucking advertisers. Not really, dude. Not in like a big advertiser sense where like the advertisers pulled off of YouTube in large droves because like there's a guy with 5 subscribers that puts out Nazi content. You know, you know what I'm saying, you know what I'm speaking to there. Obviously, there are technically advertisers in the space, but like they're not gonna fucking blame you for one guy in your Discord saying some shit. Um, I'd extend this, timing being prevalent, I suppose. I'm not saying this because of this, but just, for the community at large. I don't give a fuck about how people treat me. Uh, I'd extend this to things that are inherently negative for the community, like banning teams because they complain about other teams or tournament decisions, DDoSing rival tournament hosts. The example of like, what is it, Dad's Army, or I don't actually, because I fucking, I came in late to the game. I don't, yeah, everyone was in Discord and saw in the ARCL Discord that guy was trying to DDoS the terabit servers or whatever that ARCL was using. Um, right? That's wrong. Or ginning up support to tank a scrimmage or a match. I can't remember which tournament it was when I was in squad. There was we faced a team. We didn't really care about it, and like I think they just I think we just played a match the next day to compensate. So like we weren't really out anything. I think there were a couple of teams in a tournament that really disliked a ruling and thought that they were getting targeted for something. So when their match days came around, they refused to spawn in for the match. Um, that's kind of tanking the match, isn't it? Right? You're kind of fucking with the tournament. Yeah, that's probably not like, hey, if you disagree with something, you probably could have. That's childish. That's weird. You're wasting a bunch of people's times. Like you could have communicated that better beforehand. Um, it's like I said, not currently a big problem, but with more time, time just compounds stuff. The disparity between teams that are quote unquote allowed to participate in the competitive community will get really crazy. Um, in squad, I think by 2019, like after I had left Korea and went to the States and was playing with ordinary North American teams. Um, there were 3 to 4 tournaments that would run a year. Probably rough ballpark, there were 50, maybe 60 teams total in squad. Lots of teams like wouldn't participate in all of their tournaments. For instance, like Oceania ran their own tournament, and only once every now and then would teams from there kind of participate in like North American tournaments, because the ping was too bad. But like probably 60 if I had to guess. Um, I'd I'd say probably 20 of them, maybe a little more, were banned from two or three of the tournaments that would run each year for just dumb stuff like shit talking another team that like had a majority of staff members from their team on this one tournament, or saying some weird off color shit. One guy said something weird on a public server, and now the entire team's getting the rep for that. You you develop more reasons to remove people from the conversation and participation with time. You don't come up with less, right? It's not you get rid of 5 people and then, all right, everyone else is doing fine. Um, I'm gonna leave that there, because again, I'm not speaking to like us getting banned from the ARCL Discord. I'm just saying that's why you want more tournaments as opposed to less, because all you have to do is like anger one person, and what now your 20 guys can't fucking play. It's one of those things that like I'm being vague about it because it's just kind of an overarching like ooh beware topic, but it's one of those things that people are going to look back on months or years from now and go like, fuck yeah, that didn't really work out. That was probably not great. But anyways, thanks for sticking with me. One of the shorter episodes for sure. Yeah. I don't ever know how to close these things out. Once I get co-hosts too, it'll flow a little bit better. We'll have like sections in between the topics that are a little more like, yeah, that's fucking crazy. A little more like kind of hanging out or palling around. Not to say that these aren't going to lose focus or get less concise, but yeah, I don't know. Words, stuff. Join the Discord, participate, or join the Discord and don't participate. I don't know. Censorship and removal comes for us all at the end of the day. Having a spine means that you run the risk of having your back broken. I'm coining that term.